As human beings, we're constantly learning. Learning literally encompasses everything that we do. Now, I believe that this learning typically occurs as we encounter problems or questions that we try to answer on a daily basis. Further, I believe that it's this kind of learning that helps make us better people. The reason that I say that is because as we learn, we gain knowledge, we gain skills, we gain flexibility and the ability to adapt to different situations, and all of these things combine together to make us better people. But how does that learning occur? And keep in mind that when I'm talking about learning today, I'm not talking about academic learning, but rather personal learning. Sometimes we try to learn by mimicking things that we've seen happen before us. So if we have a friend or a family member or a colleague who's encountered a similar problem or question, we might copy the thinking and the thought processes and the learning that they went through in the hope that it will also work for us. Sometimes we try to learn by relying on experts. Again, if we have a question that we can't answer, we'll seek out an expert who will gladly give us his or her advice. But again, we have to hope that their experiences and their learning work for us. Now, the problem that I have with both of those techniques is that I don't think that they tend to be very effective for most people, largely because they rely on other people to guide our personal learning. When we do these things, we rely on them to tell us how to learn, when to grow, when to change, how to improve. And that's not effective for most of us. I would argue that our learning would be substantially improved and far more meaningful if we had control over our own learning, our own growth, and our own improvement. What I'm really talking about is empowering ourselves to take control over our own personal learning. Now, who among us probably doesn't like the idea of empowerment in that sense? Most of us would like to be in control of our own learning and our own growth, as opposed to having other people tell us how to do that, when to do that, what it should look like, and so forth. The problem that I think most of us struggle with is, how do we start this process of personal empowerment? What does it look like? Well, first, I think by identifying some aspect of our lives that we want to change or otherwise improve empowers us to make our lives better. Right from the start, we're taking control, we're taking ownership over the thing that we want to change. We're not waiting for someone else to tell us what to change. I think that by generating an alternative solution or a different strategy of doing this thing that we want to improve empowers us to make our lives better. Again, not only are we taking control and responsibility for identifying the thing that we want to change, but also the way that we want to change it. Gathering evidence of the effectiveness with which this new strategy works for us also empowers us to make our lives better. We're not waiting for someone else to tell us if the learning that they imposed on us works. We're in charge of that part of the process as well. Finally, I think reflecting on this entire process of identifying something that we want to change, finding a different way of doing it and then trying it out, gathering evidence of the effectiveness, but then making a plan for where we go next. Is this the solution, or do we need to keep looking? All of this empowers us to make our lives better. Now, what I think is so amazing about this idea of personal empowerment and what makes its application so incredible is its flexibility and capability to adapt to virtually any aspect of our lives. And I want to share with you a simple, concrete example, one that some of you might be able to relate to. So, I hate driving. Technically, that's not true. I don't hate the act of driving. I rather enjoy the act of driving, provided that I get to be the only person on the road. Because it's all the other people on the road that really serve as a source of my frustration. Now, I know that that's not a realistic expectation for me to have, that I can be the only person on the road. So I need to find an alternative way to engage in this act of driving that will somehow make it more enjoyable for me, or at least less stressful and frustrating. Now, I live in a large metropolitan area, and the driving time for me to get from my home to my office on campus is on average about 25 minutes. There are literally a dozen different routes that I could take to get from point A to point B. Some of those routes are far more frustrating than others. And it's those frustrating routes that literally will make my blood boil. And when I say that, I am being very literal. My blood pressure will catapult into the stratosphere as a result of taking some of those routes. And I know that that is not a good thing for me. That's something I have to change in my life. So I'm going to embark on this process to try to change this for myself. So like many of us would do, I take out my phone, I Google map different routes for me to get from home to work, and I'm going to start with the shortest one. Probably makes sense. Most of us would probably do that, right? We're going to start with the shortest route and see how that one works. So I take this shortest route and I drive it every day for the next week. And then at the end of the week, I assess how well it worked for me. And here's what I find out. Absolutely horrific. Tons of stoplights, tons of traffic, stop-and-go traffic. Most of it was stopping more than much going. And there's a stretch of about 4 to 5 blocks near the end of that route where I have to drive in front of a hospital. And apparently, 7:45 a.m. is shift change time at the hospital. So I'm literally sitting in traffic. Every day that week, I got to work at least 15 minutes later than average. And I was frustrated, I was stressed out, I was agitated. So now it's 8 a.m., I'm walking from my car to the building, and I'm already angry. And that's just not a good way to start a day. So I have to go back and find a different solution. So I Google map a different route, try that one every day for the next 5 days, and assess how it works at the end. And again, here's what I find out. Much better. Fewer stoplights, far less traffic, no hospital to drive in front of. I got to work every day that week 20 minutes earlier than every day the week before. Not stressed, not frustrated, blood pressure at a nice, safe level. I walk into the building in a good mood, a much better way to start my day. But I also know that this is something that I'm going to have to constantly reassess. Because the day may come when they decide to install new stoplights, resurface the road, or, heaven forbid, build a new hospital on my new and improved route to work. See, what I'm really talking about is using this idea of personal empowerment in a continuous improvement manner. The idea that we use this every day as a mechanism to find little ways to improve our lives and make us better people. Now, some of you might be saying, this sounds like common sense. This is what I do every day when I make decisions. To a certain extent, I will agree with you, but I would argue that our typical day-to-day learning, the way that we learn and grow every day, looks nothing like this. It's more haphazard. It's not organized. It's not systematic. It's not structured in this way. And I think that by doing this, we need to empower ourselves, and we will empower ourselves to take control over our own learning. My advice to you is don't wait for someone else to tell you how to grow, how to improve, and how to become a better person. In fact, I want to challenge each and every one of you here today to think about some aspect of your life that you would like to change. No matter how big or how small, it doesn't matter if it's personal, professional, academic, it doesn't matter because you own it. It's about you and your life. Find a different way of doing this thing and try it out. Gather some evidence of how well it worked for you, and then make a plan for where you go next. Is this the solution, or do I need to keep looking? Do I need to keep finding better ways to improve? Take on the challenge of becoming a better person. You have control over your world. Empower yourself to initiate the change that you want to see in you.